Alright, we're gonna give RAW a try tonight on TryHackMe. RAW is more advanced room. Definitely has some harder concepts. You have to kind of delve information from the environment to get to the next step, and then from there, think outside the box on ways to get users to kind of talk to you and get credentials and stuff like that. So let's look at the box and see how you could approach it and kind of how similar it is to maybe a real pen test. Alright, so this is the box on TryHackMe. I already started up. It's a challenge box, so there's not really much instructions besides a little tiny bit of story and that you should, answer these 3 flags basically. So with any box, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and copy the IP address. We'll get this going. We're going to put this into our targets file. And then we'll start off with the initial Nmap scan and the detailed Nmap scan. So we'll go ahead and split this up. We're going to do nmap-il input list basically, and then targets.text. We'll do pn and t5, and then we're going to output all formats, and that's going to be our knit scan for raw. We'll also do nmap-il targets here. We're going to initialize our script in a scanning engine, default version. We'll look for some vulns. So with the initial port scan already coming back, we can see that there's a lot of extra ports that are open. So we can go ahead and turn on some additional scripting stuff. So we'll do LDAP star, SMB star. What else do we see? We can do an XMPP star. Let's go with that. And then we'll turn on script timeout. If you don't turn this on, what happens is that some scripts will just keep running and then they'll never stop on you. So this is a good way to kind of stop that. We're going to do advanced and then OS detection and then output all formats, and we'll call this detailed. Detailed raw. Alright, so that's going to take a little bit of time. So let's look at what ports that we got for the initial feedback. We saw that port 53, which is a DNS. We see port 80, 8080, Kerberos, Microsoft RPC, NetBIOS, LDAP, HTTPS. We also have the Microsoft SMB port. Couple LDAPs there. We see RDP is available, an XMPP client, which is like a chat client. Something on port 7070 says it's real server 7443 777s 9090 and 9091. So if you didn't know, what Nmap does is it basically looks at these ports and then looks at like a services list built into Linux, and it just kind of says that that's what that port is, without doing its banner checks and stuff like that. When you do the advanced and like -sv and service versions and stuff like that, then that's when you get that. I turned on version scripting, so we should get some information back from those ports and stuff like that for versions. But let's go ahead and look at the web pages. So if we do the initial page, we get WinCorp. We'll see it's interesting little page. list out their IT staff, our developer departments, HR department, employees in focus, and some other pages here. So these all look like links that don't really go anywhere. They're all pound tags. We can click on each one. We see that this one's trying to connect to a Fire WinCorp, which is probably not going to be able to do that without having something set up in our Etsy host file. So we'll need to change that in our Etsy host. So we'll go ahead and send that up, that IP address, and also the main domain of that to be that same IP address. All right, so let's see if this will load now. Excellent. So this loads up. This looks like a reset page. We have a username. Looks like we need to answer a question in order to reset that password. So we don't have that information just yet. Looks like some of these, now you're getting status icons or something like that. We can see that these look like usernames. So each one of these has different usernames. If we load this up again, maybe it'll show us better status. Yep. So based on this, it kind of looks like there's some people online, there's some people idle. There's some names. Not much else from that. Let's see what HTTPS gives us. So if a site has HTTPS, in this case it's asking for a username and password. We don't have any of that yet, but one of the things that you can do is kind of look at the cert and see if that gives you a little bit of information here. So we can see that the CN is Windows Admin Center. If we view the certificate, don't get much details there. We're not getting any more details there. Okay. So usually what you could get from this maybe is that, it was assigned to a domain or a certain domain, and that kind of points you in the direction of what you need to set the Etsy host file or things like this. Now that we have this set up, we could also do wincorp.thm, and that should basically just load the same thing since we have that set up. So if you never knew what your Etsy host file does, it's the first location that Linux checks to see how to resolve a DNS name. And so if it's there, then it uses that. And then the next step is your local DNS server. And then it just basically asks that local DNS server, hey, who has, wincorp.thm? And so it'll first try thm, which thm doesn't exist as a root server. That's why like .coms and stuff like that. So it'll start .com. .com says, well, ask this other server, WinCorp should have that, and then basically ask that, and so on and so forth, depending on your domains and where it needs to ask those questions. All right, so we don't have much here. We could start a Code Buster and see if that will give us any information. Again, just sticking to our normal scan and reconnaissance first. So we're putting the website there. We're going to do the standard word list of user, share, word list, directory buster, or dir buster, and then directory. And that's going to be 2.2, 2.3 medium. And then we want to go ahead and save that output, right? So we're just going to save this as, whoops, WinCorp. And then we'll say 80. And save it as a text file. Oops. All right, so that's going to go ahead and start, trying different directories, seeing if we get any status pages. So we can see immediately we got an image status. There's CSS now too. All right, so if we look back to, we notice some other different ports. These are kind of standard 80, 8080, 135, 139, 3389, 445, 636. Those are all kind of domain controller ports open. Some of these more advanced ones, 32, 68, 69. Again, that can be associated with AD also. And then you got these other services like XAMPP client, and then we have 77, 7070, 7443, all sevens, 9090, and 9091. So let's see if we could see anything on those. So again, we'll take WinCorp. We'll go look at 7070. Oops. Okay, we get an open finding HTTP binding server. We had a 7443. Looks like some kind of binary stuff. We'll try HTTPS to see if anything changes. Okay, looks like we're getting something here. So we see that the fire.wincorp.thm. So again, same thing, HTTP binding service. And then we also had all sevens, so we'll try all sevens. Need to change this back to HTTP. So we know OpenFire is installed on this. We don't know what that is yet completely, but we got 9090. Yep, so there's the admin console OpenFire. So now we have a version information there. And then we could also just try 9091. Oops. So again, some binary stuff. Let's try HTTPS and see if that comes up with something. All right, so that's the HTTPS version of the admin console. All right, so that's good to know. It gives us more information about some of the underlying services. All right, so it looks like our detailed scan got done. This is still going. We're pulling some additional directories, so let's look in detail, see what Nmap came up with. All right, Nmap came up with a lot. All right, we can see it was able to pull that it was some kind of DNS information bind and version. But we're running Microsoft IIS HTTPD 10.0, which that's going to be the newest version. Didn't pull any Kerberos information, but we did pull the Kerberos time. This is good if you're trying to do any tickets or anything like that to know how much it's behind. We see a lot of LDAP results. So now we're getting more real good detail about this. We know that the server is fire.wincorp.thm. The AD name is wincorp.thm. So in a Windows environment, you have server names, and then you have the whole group basically that they belong to, or Active Directory that they belong to. So this is the server's name is Fire, and it belongs to the wincorp.thm. We see a lot of more supported policies and controls. Okay, we see some details information on port 443 here. We see that it is trying to negotiate NTLM, which is interesting. This is the Windows admin server. And then here's the subject alternative name. So this computer name is Win-2FAA40QQ70B. That's what it was set up as initially. And it might get renamed to Fire. Okay, so we see that we are able to pull the LDAP information from the server. Again, here we can see all this information. There's the server name, Fire, servers. We see that RDP is open. Again, there's the NetBIOS domain name. There's the computer name. A lot of good information here. This is really good. We get port 5222. It related it to Jabber now that it got more detailed information. The reason is because now it got the version of the banner. And we see that this is Ignite Real-Time OpenFire Jabber Server 3.10.0. So again, this is more information that we can use to see if there's any vulnerabilities out. There's the XMPP info. We see a stream. Same thing, Wildfire XAMPP client. There's a Jetty server. More Jetty. So it looks like it's running some kind of SOCKS 5 proxy maybe. No authentication, but the connection failed. 9090 has some Java RMI. Bad message. All right, so we saw SMB open, and so the first thing you kind of want to do with an SMB port is do SMB map. So we'll do this. We'll do SMB map. We'll do corp.thm. Again, that's going to resolve to that IP address. We don't know a username or a password yet, so we're just going to do anonymous. We'll see if that comes up with anything. And it does not. So we can try -u anonymous. Whoops. Authentication error. Try guest. So it looks like the SMB port is not going to be like a null connect. Something that would have probably been picked up on Nmap. So we're not able to get any information out of that. So we need to kind of look back at what we have. We have the availability of OpenFire. So we can try a search exploit. OpenFire. We're looking for 4.5, so it doesn't look like that we have anything here. That's going to knock out those two ports. So let's look back at this page. Let's maybe look at a little bit more details. And so again, we're trying to follow our methodology, right? Like we scanned all the ports, we got all the information from the ports, but we need some way of accessing the system. Right now, null authentication is not happening for us, and so we need to get the availability of one of these accounts. We do have a reset password function here, but it looks like we need some kind of insider information, and maybe what information that we have in front of us gives us that. We just need to figure that out. So let's look at that. Let's just double check our scan real quick and see if GoBusters found anything more. Right now it just looks like image CSS vendor image CSS image. So nothing really to give us more information about this. So we're going to look at the page source, but we're also going to look at this page while we're looking at that. So welcome to our company portal. We'll try some test. When we click enter here, nothing happens. So this is not going anywhere. This is not active. We do see the support staff. So if we hover over each one of these, we do see XMPP, and they have a name: Organic Fish, 718, Organic Wolf, 509, Tiny Wolf, 424, so on and so forth. Okay, so there's some names now. We have some names to try. We see a developer department works tirelessly. Our HR department, there's always there to help. We have some more employee names, maybe. Emily Jensen. Doesn't show her name or anything there. Lively Lightsky. And Kurt. Okay. So, with what information we do have, what I compiled was I took those um, users that we found on the page, and we want to make sure that they're valid users to begin with. And so, in this usernames.complete file, it's basically all those users that we saw on the page here. And so I at first put the at fire.wincorp.thm because that's the domain, that's the computer, and then without them. Um, and so once we do that, we can now use Kerberoot because Kerberos is available to us to see if those are going to be. And so Kerberoot is using the pre-authentication of Kerberos to see if the user's valid. Um, yeah, so tool assist in quickly brute forcing valid Active Directory account through Kerberos pre-authentication, designed to use being on an internal Windows domain. If it fails, it'll count as a failed login. So we're just trying user enumeration. So what we're going to do is user enum. We're going to specify WinCorp. We'll go ahead and put the DC too as WinCorp. And then we're going to use that usernames complete file. So we can see that each one of those users are valid. We see that it was able to find those at the WinCorp THM. So each one of those accounts are valid accounts. But again, we don't have a password. We don't have anything to way to basically gain access. So we're still looking for that way to gain access. So looking at the web page, we see, that this is opening. If we click that reset thing, we're opening up a fire.wincorp reset ASP. So we know this is ASP active server pages. There's some bootstrap stuff. What you're kind of looking for is comments and things like that. See if anything else kind of stands out. We see the way that it's able to pull those statuses is by querying the Fire WinCorp THM 9090 port, plugins, presence, status. Again, we already looked up Open Fire and nothing for this current version gave us an exploit. So that didn't seem like a way to go. There's some call to action, footers, bootstrap core. All right. So we'll look back at this page. Again, we had a reset password function. So we need to find someone's mother's maiden name, first grade teacher's name, favorite pet's name, or first make of the car. And so again, with the information that we saw and what we have, the only thing that kind of stuck out was maybe this pet. There's an animal here. But we don't know that pet's name. So let's see if it's something, if we get any more information from here. let's see, let's look for images. So if we start looking for the images, we can see here's our employees in focus. And so Emily JE is the first one. Love it. Thanks for believing in me. Lily and Sparky. I love being able to hang with my best friend and work with me. And Kurt UG. So the web page kind of gives us this information that we're looking for here. We're looking for that favorite pet's name. And so now we have a name, Lily. And what is our favorite pet's name? It's Sparky. So we do that and we're greeted with a change me pound 1234 as the password. All right, excellent. So now we have a user, Lily, and a password now, change me. So this host had a lot of, availability of ports and stuff like that. So we'll first try again SMB map, right? We want to see what does this user have access to now. So we need to do wincorp.thm. Now we have a user, so we're going to do user LILYLE, and their password was change capital me pound 1234. So let's see what they have access to now. So we see we have access to a couple read-only systems. But what I want to introduce you to is a new tool to kind of show you once you have credentials for somebody. If you have Ldap available, you could do more with that. So what we're going to look at is called Ldap Dump, and that's going to be on GitHub. So this one here, DirtJanM, has an Ldap dump, and what this is going to do is it's going to connect to Ldap, which is usually not monitored as heavy as like Active Directory or SMB and stuff like that. And it's going to dump all the information out of Ldap and put it into like groups and users and computers and policies and trust, and that way you can kind of look at this information and get more about the domain from that. So we'll clone this. We're going to clone this in this directory here. So git clone, and then paste that in. And then with that there, we can now go into that directory. And we're just going to run this. So Python 3, Ldap dump. And so it just needs a username, a password, and a host name. So we'll click connect with the Lily. We're going to do a password of change me pound 1234, and then again when corp.thm. Okay. So it says we need to use a domain. All right. Now I need to put it in single tick so that it can interpret it right. All right, so now it's connecting to the host. It's going to bind to it, and it's going to start Ldap domain dump. And so again, like this is more low key, less likely to get caught type stuff. So it's going to take a couple minutes here. On a bigger domain, of course, this could take, you know, half an hour, hours, depending on how big your domain is. So that one's done. And we have now all these HTML files. So if we just kind of wanted to look at this, we could do Firefox at .html. And this presents us in a nice information and gives us a lot more background information on what the system is. So we can see this is domain computers by OS. So with this being the only system up, it's the only one there, of course. We do see that it is called Fire. There's the domain name. It is Windows Server 2019 standard. So this is, the newest version of Windows Server, basically. We see domain computer accounts. Again, nothing different there. And then here's your groups. We have a bunch of different groups. We see Docker users, domain lurkers, cert reader, cert owner, dev, HR, IT. And then these are kind of more your standard type Windows groups. And we can see that this goes pretty far. Any of these links are clickable, so like we could click that and then that would just basically send us to a different one where we'd see cert readers or things like that. So people buy domains, like here's administrators or enterprise admins and domain lurkers. So we see Vivian Miller's a domain lurker. What is a domain lurker? I don't know. That's a weird group that's created, for this domain. There's just like IT. So we see these are all IT people. We also noticed there are some IT people that we saw earlier, like Organic Fish 718, which, if you remember back to the main page here, when we're looking at these statuses, oops, that was this person right here, right? Yeah, Organic Fish 718. So we're now seeing who this is, tying it to a regular account. We see that their normal account, their password does not expire. Same thing with Isabel, Golden Cat 48416. So now you're getting a little bit more information out of this report and seeing where these people are at. We see a domain policy, so this is good to kind of know too. We see that the lockout time window is 2 minutes for 2 minutes duration after 5 password attempts. So you could brute force up to 5 times and then you're locked out for 2 minutes. Minimum age has to be 7 days. I'm sorry, minimum password length has to be 7. The password has to be available. You can't change the password for 1 day, and it can only be 42 days long. So again, if you're in auditing or anything like this too, this Ldap dump will basically kind of give you this information as a standard user. I mean, we don't know what rights we have yet, but I'm pretty sure it's not admin rights. So here's all your domain users. Actually, we could look it up. LYLLE. There's our account. Yeah, normal account. Domain user. And again, this is in an HTML format, so this is a nice, way to put it into PDF or anything like that, to highlight any of these things if you needed to. So, all right, so good information. All right. So let's go back. So we have a user now. It's a standard user. It doesn't have RDP rights or anything like that. We don't have access to the server to get any more information like that. We can't run stuff on that server. So we need to kind of see again what's available to us as this user. So we initially, before we did this LDAP domain, we did an SMB map. And what SMB map is just showing you all the shares that are available on that server as that user. So we're going to look at this again real quick. All right, so we have shared and users. Those are the two file shares that stand out. The rest are your standard ones. So admin $, you see you have no access, and that's usually reserved for admin users. Same thing with C $, no access. Remote IPC, um, again, no access. It's a $. It's usually admin access. Then you have net logon, which is your domain controller standard policy location. So anything like your GPOs and things like that are stored in this net logon directory. If this was an older domain, highly, highly, highly recommend that you look into this net logon. Because what happened is in 2003, Windows didn't prevent admins from putting passwords into their domain policies. And there was a way to basically get those passwords out of those domain policies and decrypt them and then look at that. With this being a 2019 server, it's less likely that they've done that. And then we have Sysvol, so same thing there. Sysvol's more like, again, with domain controllers. So the only two that stand out is shared and users. These are your non-standard um, shares, basically. And so what we want to do is we want to see what's in those shares. And you can do an SMB client and then try to fiddle with that. I always like mounting shares. I don't like to do SMB client. So in order to do SMB client, you have to create a directory on your system for that. I have one for share. I'm going to go ahead and also make a directory for users. All right. And so then we're going to do a mount command. We're going to do a -O for options. Put in the username. Oh, that's 0, not O. Put in the username. So whenever you have a username, you need to specify it. And then we're going to do // wincorp.thm. And we're going to do the share one first, right? So shared, and we'll do that. We'll mount that to share. So we're saying on this remote server, and take the shared directory and mount it to our shared directory. It's going to ask us for the password. And if there's no error, then that should be mounted. And then we'll do that the same thing with the users. And then we're going to look at these. All right, so both of these are now mounted. So now we now have access to each one of those directories. So we'll start off with the shared one. I always do like an ls-alr, and then we're going to do share. So this is going to look at all files in a long list recursively. And then that way we see any hidden files, we see it in a list, and then anything, if there's directories or anything like that in that share, we see all that stuff. All right, so we got our first flag. That's awesome. And we have this Spark 283 Debian DMG exe and tarbgz. So looks like some kind of application that provided in every format possible so that it can be used. That's great. We'll also look now at the users directory. All right, so it looks like there's a lot of users here. We can see that We have administrator, all users, Angry Bird, Berg, Brittany CR, Browno Stitch. You'll notice that some of these have 0, and then some of them have actual link to them. And so these might have more information or something else in them, something to kind of look about a little bit more. Again, we could do the add the R option here and see in depth what it can read as our current user again. So we can see that we got some information out of that directory. So right now we're looking at users default. So this is like the default user. There's not going to be like any authentication data or anything like that. It's not like all users where like so all users basically means that every user on the box would have the same type of stuff. Default is kind of like a weird user that basically you logged in and it couldn't pull your domain profile or anything like that. Um, so the information we're seeing, it's not really going to give us too much information. It's also not a way to attack anybody. If this was all users, what you could do is do like an LMK file attack or things like that, where you basically put a malicious LMK on the desktop so that when the user looks at their desktop next time, it would basically spit out a hash to you. If it and then that would kind of hopefully give you that option there. You could also change some of their LMK files or shortcuts basically to do that too, if you have write access to them. So we can see that all these are pulling up these LMK files, but again this is in default app data local. Same thing with like an INI or desktop INI. Again, you can put icon files in there, like a space for icons to load, and those icons could be back to your home server to catch hashes and stuff like that. So what's going to happen is the computer will load that INI file. It'll say, okay, I need to load the icon file. Oh, this icon file is stored on this shared. Let me go try to access that resource. And then if you're running like Responder or Metasploit to capture it, basically that resource says, hey, you need to authenticate to me, and the system's like, oh, okay, here's my authentication, and Responder or Metasploit's like, okay, thanks for that, and then you basically go crack that hash. So we're seeing a lot of information again in defaults. Let's go back to that main directory while this is just kind of spitting out stuff and see if we can do anything with that. Now again with all these boxes, I kind of I play with this stuff a little bit beforehand and show off. So what I originally did is I don't like to install files on my system without knowing what they are. So I originally created a Docker container. I had installed the Spark Debian in there. Uh, was able to get like a GUI interface to pop up on my system and all this other stuff. But what would happen is Spark would require resources like accessing the sound card and some dev basically hardware um, parts of Linux, and so then it would crash because it can't do that in a Docker container, and so that didn't really work out for me. So I ended up installing it. Um, and I'll show you what that looks like. So whenever you have a Debian file in Kali, you basically just do dpkg-i and then that file. And so we're gonna have a little bit of lag because we're also reading from the network. So it's gonna read the database. It's gonna look at that. It's gonna unpackage it and then install it. Again, not recommended on a system that you do a lot of stuff on. That should be your test system, or again, I attempted a Docker container originally, so trying to mitigate that risk of just installing random files that you don't know the origin of. So we can load this up by typing Spark, and it's a fat Java file basically, and you need to log in. Um, So one of the things that I found out with this Spark application is that because again we're doing this internal type testing, you need to accept all certificates. Again, not the best security type thing. And then disable certificate hostname verification. Again, not recommended, not the best security, but what had to happen in order to make this thing work. We're going to log in with the user that we have, Lily. We're going to also just put it in the same domain that we're a part of, and we'll put her password that we have been using for the whole time. So change me 1234, pound 1234. It's going to log in, and see all this stuff here is what would cause Docker to crash, like using Pulse Audio, things like that. So again, I mapped the dev directory and stuff like that for Pulse Audio, tried to map all that type of things. I just kept getting into uh, not knowing exactly what was it trying to load, and it just didn't work. We also got our directories done. So we can see that we can't read into certain user directories, which is, yeah, makes sense. Looks like we have access to all default basically, minus some certain directories. Default. Looks like these other user directories are not really giving us any information. So yeah, all we get information of was default user, which really again doesn't give us much information there. Or doesn't give us much escalation attempt or privilege. So we'll exit that. All right, so cool, we're online, right? But who do we message? And so we go back to this main page. We can close this now. And we see that there's IT support staff online. Um, but what do we do? Like, how do you get them to read something from you or whatever? And so now this kinds of it kind of be this kind of end up being like one of those what will get them to either click or look at whatever I'm trying to send them, right? But before I do that, I want to make sure I'm set up to capture that attempt, that ability for them to contact me, right? So we'll open up a new tab, and a common tool to do this is Responder. And so what Responder does is it listens on your network interface, and if something on that network asks for a resource that's not there, Responder responds back and says, "Hey, that's me." And then that system says, "Okay, cool. I'm trying to access this resource." And it says, "Okay, cool. Provide me a credential or a hash or something to basically try to log in." Um, and then that computer basically does that. So what we're going to do is you can start up Responder by specifying the interface. Make sure you're using a capital I. Again, that's different from most tools. Majority of tools use a dash little I. This one is very specific on a dash big I. And if we look at the options here, if we do a dash H, we can look at all these other things. Analyze basically means that it won't respond back. You can specify the IP address if you need to. You can send all the poison requests to another IP address if you needed to do that. You can force the people to do basic HTTP authentication. So what's going to happen is, say that they're requesting a resource that to HTTP, like we saw earlier when we did the HTTPS port on this. It would basically pop up that HTTP portal page or thing like that. We can do an NB TNS domain response. We can fingerprint it. We could do a double WPAD attack, which is basically whenever you get onto a network, your system, your Windows system will ask for the WPAD dot whatever domain, and this basically responds and says that's me. And then we can also try to force LM hashing to downgrade. Again, this only works with specific versions, but it doesn't hurt to try it, right? So what we'll do in this case is we'll do a -F. We're gonna fingerprint. We'll do a dash LM and see if we can get anything. All right. All right. So we'll go down the list. We see that this user is available and this user is available. So we'll look them up. Okay, we're not seeing them there. Let's look them up as organic fish. Okay, we gotta be a little bit more specific. A little bit more specific. Okay, we see that they're there. So if we click them, you can kind of see again, I've played with this a little bit. Let's just clear this out. There we go. Yes. All right, so what do you send a user when you're trying to do this, right? Uh, Again, we want them to click on something. We want them either to automatically load this thing, whatever that is, right? So we'll send them a // link. Again, we need to send them whatever IP address that we are. They're trying to load a resource on our system, so they need to basically try to contact our system to do that, right? And so this is going to be our IP address right now. So we're going to do a // that IP address /test.png, or also go ahead and might as well just try multiple different attacks, right? We can also try like an HTML page. Oh, it only lets you load one line at a time, so that's not going to work. Let's try maybe like an image source where this is going to load like a picture or something. All right, and we notice the we're not seeing the user online, not getting anything, not seeing that they're busy. So again, you could try sending this message to other people too. So if we go back to the main page here, we see that the only other person that's actually active, based on the green icon, yeah, I guess that's what that would be, is Buse. So let's see if we can find him. There's Buse right here. And so again, you can already see that it tried different things. So we'll clear this out again, and I'll just open up a notepad and show you exactly what we're trying to do. All right. So again, we're trying to load a resource here. This is like a network resource. Then we're trying to load a web page, and then we're trying to do image source in different ports and different locations and things like that. What we need to do is change this to our port though, because we are that same port. So we'll copy all this information. Okay. Paste that in there. Make sure that's the only Ethernet port that we have. That's 10.0. Yep. Okay, that looks good. All right, so we get a hash. All right, so what happened is, again, I was requesting on other ports here, 8080. Again, maybe I had a web server at that time, Metasploit, trying to listen on there. And then now we just requested it again and we get this hash. All right. So when you get a hash, you have to understand what type of hash this is. And so with a Windows resource, what you're asking for is on NTLM v2, they basically upped the game from NTLM version 1. So on NTLM version 1, I could specify this front part of the hash, like what you would normally see would be like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or whatever. And then the server would just reply back with that same thing and then send you the hash. With NTLM version 2, you send over a hash, like this hash code here, and then the server sends over its hash code, and then it sends over the full hash. And so this kind of makes it a little bit longer and harder to crack. Not impossible, of course, but it just involves a little bit more, and that's the reason that basically this technology moved to that. All right, so we're going to make a directory. We're going to call this password. We'll cd into that password. All right, and we're going to echo. We're going to paste that there, and we're going to call this crackme.txt. Okay. All right, so now we have a hash, and we're going to use John to try to crack this. So we can go ahead and exit this. We'll clear this out, and then we're going to do John. And this is going to be crackme. We're going to do -w for the word list. Make sure you put your equal sign. User share word lists. And this is going to be rocku. .text. And then we'll specify the pot. So this makes sure that this is the local POT file. And we'll go ahead and specify the format since we know it as equals net. I think it's net NTLM. NTLM. Yeah, so net NTLM v2. Okay. Net NTLM v2. Okay, so that's going to run. So what, again, John's trying to do is take every one of those words in rocku, use those, the client side and the server side, random numbers that we saw earlier, and then try those, and if that gets a success, then that's the password. And so that's what we did here. We basically find out the password from that. All right, great. So now we have another password, right? And again, we can go through the way that we normally do stuff. We could look to see, do we got more permissions? So now we can do wincorp.thm. We'll do user as that, as this. See if he gets any more access to anything. Also, remember we have those reports from earlier. So we see we're still read-only accessed on this information. We do have access to the user's directory now, so we could look at that. So raw, and then it was in Ldap Dump, and we wanted to do Firefox all HTML pages. Okay, so that's not going to help us. That's not going to help us. There's the domain groups. That's not going to help us right now. Policy, trust, users. So we got access to booze, right? And it was booze Canadian. All right, apparently there's a bunch. There we go. All right, so he is a normal account with a SID of this. See what groups he in. Okay, it looks like this is just going to be all the users. One of 4 matches. Whoops. Two of 4. So again, this is a little bit harder to kind of see this stuff. It is a lower risk of getting caught though by pulling it via Ldap. This looks like this is going to be just, yeah, users. Alright, so that's not really helping us. There's the domain users. Is he in here? Whoops. What's going on there? No, I didn't want to save that to library. Thank you. So he is part of IT, which that's probably pretty good. Alright, so he's part of IT. So we probably have a pretty good account here. So with him being part IT, what we should be able to do technically then is maybe use more of the administrative type ports. So we can look at those now, right? We saw that RDP was open, so we could try that. So xv RDP. Let's just load up the help file here. And to do that, we need to do a dash slash u colon. Need to specify the domain. WinCorp.thm. I kind of started just switching straight to free RDP most of the time now, because the other one doesn't work as much. It always ends up seeing that you run into errors and things like that, and so just going straight to free RDP usually makes it easier. For the V, which is the host, we want to do again wincorp.thm. So it's asking us if we trust the cert. We do, but looks like network level authentication fail. So it's trying to authenticate us as a computer on the domain to log into the system, and we can't do that because we don't have that cert. All right. Um, so then another avenue that we have for remote administration would have been SMB. We saw that we are a Windows 2019 server, um, so we could try maybe like a PS exec or things like that. But before we go that route, let's do WinRM. So on your newer systems, when Windows Remote Management is default enabled, and this is a nice, easy way to kind of have access to the system. Um, and one of the ways to do this is called Evil WinRM. So Evil WinRM here is basically like a a way to log in through RM and load scripts and things like that into the environment at the same time. What we're going to do is we're going to run the Docker version of this. Again, doesn't require you to install anything. Allows you to just kind of execute it as long as you have Docker installed, which you can easily install Docker. So we copy and pasted that. We can delete all that file, all these little options like PS files and things like that. We don't have any of those. So again, you could bring your own PowerShell scripts, things like that that really help you out or that you're used to. And they get loaded into memory, so they'll more likely bypass most of the protections and stuff like that. So we're putting in the password for the user here that we had. We need to put in the name. We're going to put in the IP address, which we'll just put the domain name. Okay, so this is going to run that there. This is mounting this directory. We don't have a home foo data. We could put this as temp if we wanted to. So again, what this is mounting is the temp directory on our system to the data directory on the Docker container. Same thing with these exe files, these PS scripts. Since we don't have any of those things, we don't care about those. We're deleting that. That's the name of the Docker container. And we're specifying that name. We're running a TTY interactive. Basically, remove it whenever we're done, and then the Docker run command. So that's just gonna run it, download the container, run it, and then delete it when we're done, when we're no longer needing this anymore. So this should give us like a shell-like access once we get this, similar to like PowerShell almost. Does take a little bit. Make sure the machine didn't expire. Nope, we're still good. So one of the things you might be asking is, well, why couldn't we pass this a hash or done any of that stuff? With Net NTLM version 2, again, like you saw there, we had our random number and then the server random number, and so that doesn't give you the ability to kind of pass a hash to log into the system. On your lower NTLM, um, you can specify that random number and then log into the system that way. So this should run. Yeah. Try doing it the other way with the IP address. TI dash dash name evil win RM2. Just wanted, what was it? Home, like home to data to be mounted to data. Make sure I got that right. Home phone data, okay. Oops, home food data. Mounted to data, and then for the I, we'll put the IP address, dash U, we'll put the host name in single ticks, dash password into the single ticks. And I need to special do another dash before the RM. Docker run. Oh, I forgot to put this in there. So it didn't know basically what Docker container I'm trying to run. Okay, so that's data there, and then specify that there. There we go. Yeah, so the other one hung up for whatever reason. No idea why. We can see that we have access to the system now. So as user boost, we see that he has common directories. Common thing like this is once you get access to these admin systems, you'll want to look at their desktop, see if there's anything on there. There is flag 2. There's also notes, stuff, and also stuff. Again, on a Windows environment, you might be used to cat. You can try cat on here. With PowerShell, that kind of works. I really should be better at taking, and I guess he must have been trying to type notes. We can look at stuff. See if there's anything in here. Passwords, it's another directory. Okay, so Facebook password. Which is password. That's awesome. And then let's look at also other stuff. So that. So anytime there's a space in the directories, you can do like a single tick, and then that kind of will make sure that you're going to that directory there. So we see download, fun, and max res default. So there's some kind of files in there. So we're not seeing anything that kind of stands out. We can kind of see if Evil WinRM has any built-in functions to kind of help us out with stuff here. We see that we can type menu. That's going to load up. We can also load up any of the PowerShell scripts. Again, this is if we loaded up additional PowerShell scripts at the time. Same thing with binaries. Get done DLL loader inflection, donut loader. Looks like we're let's rerun this again. So if we type menu, we don't get much there because we didn't load anything. Again, we're trying to look for things that stand out. We could upload WinPs. That'd be another thing that we could do if we have WinPs on the system. So let's see if we can upload. We would need to put that into maybe our home food directory. Yeah, so all that's in there right now is that. Let's we'll need to unshrink this window. We'll go ahead and close that terminal. Not gonna like that, but that's fine. Split this again. Depending on where you put it, WinPs is not installed by default into Kali. For me, it's in my opt and then tools. And then privilege, escalation, awesome script suite. And so we see it there, and then WinPs, and then we're gonna go for the WinPs exe. Then we're gonna need still go in WinPs, and if I remember right, it is going to be bin after that. x64. With it being a Windows 2019 system, it's definitely more likely 64. And we see that that's where WinPs is at. So we got to copy this long directory. We should put that into that home food data directory, and then we should hopefully get access to this. If not, we might have to restart the container and add that as an exe basically in the volumes there. So we'll copy all this. Slash winps.exe, and then we're going to do home foo data. You'll notice that it's there. Okay, so now if we do upload, not showing up. All right, so we'll need to add that into our volume. And so now we'll need to actually kind of look back at what we had before. Alright, so we want vhome.foo.exe files. So we can do this volume here. We'll add that to our command line. Oops. Okay. And then we also needed to add another one, which is this -exe files. So now whenever we copy into foo.exe files, that should be available on exe files, and then again, for an environment variable, it's loading that in there. So we'll go home foo exe files. And now let's see if that's available. Still not available. Did we mess up something? Let's see here. ls home foo exe files. Oh, I copied it directly on there instead of in the directory. Let's just do win p's. Let's try this one more time. If not, what we can do is we can just host the file web server and then pull it that way. Alright, let's first ls-foo. Let's do a big one of that and see if that's seen as a file. Yeah, so it sees it as a file, not as a directory. So we need to make a directory there. Remove home foo exe files. Okay. And then we're going to make dir home foo exe underscore files. Okay. Then we'll copy that file into that directory when peas.exe. Okay. Now we should be able to mount this without any issue. Remember that in Docker container, all local paths should be data. That is mapped correctly. Okay, so did it do it though? The ls. No. How about menu? How about invoke binary? Alright, so let's look at this. What is going on? We're missing something here. Upload local files. Upload local file name. Upload local file name. Destination file name. So upload. This should be an exe files, right? Exe files. winpeas.exe. Winpeas.exe. We'll give us a shot, and then if not, we're just gonna, yeah, see, something's not right here. All right, we'll host it and then use PowerShell to basically grab this. So we're going to cd op into this directory. Okay, yep, so we see that. Python 3, again, remember, you should be using Python 3 now. Then we're going to do the HTTP server. This is going to host it on port 8000 by default, right? All right, so now it's available there, and then we need to use a PowerShell script to basically pull this file from there. So we could look up a PowerShell one-liner to do that. The way that I always end up doing this is PowerShell one-liner, and that's usually by Harmjoy. And let's just do download Cradle. That's what it's called. There you go. That's basically a little like gist of all the commands that you could run to basically do one-liners in PowerShell to download stuff. Alright, so that's that. We're going to change this. We need to change this to so this is trying to download and execute that. We don't want to do that. So we don't want to download Gradle. We just want to download. So let's take out Cradle. So we could just do the new object download string and not do the actual execution. There's another way to do it too. PowerShell download file. Here we go. Invoke Web Request. So you do invoke web request dash URI, the URL, then the out file. Okay, so for the URL, we are putting http // that's going to be the 10 slash point, what were we, 212, 212, 219, 212, 219. Remember we're on port 8000 and we're downloading WinPeas. And again, you got to be very, case sensitive, everything. So .exe. Okay, let's just go ahead and put this in single ticks to make sure that this doesn't get messed up or something. And then for the out file, we're just going to save this as winpeas.exe. So we'll put this in single ticks too, just in case. All right, so we see a get there. Awesome. That's downloading now. And that should be done. If we look, WinPeas is there. Oh, forgot we're in PowerShell. So you need to do the / to call it. Or PowerShell thinks that you're trying to call something else. So if you've never seen One Piece before, what it's doing is it's trying multiple different like auditing tests and basically spitting out this long report for you to look at and kind of know what your next steps are or give you more information about the system and what's going on. And so what it ends up doing is it kind of ends up highlighting some of the areas that need to look at. And so this is something you definitely, could run on an internal network or on your internal system, and it would spit out stuff like this to kind of let you know, hey, these are things that you should look at. Maybe some problem areas, things like that. So cool little graphic, little there. All right, so let's look at what we got going on. We see uh, Laps is not installed. Again, this is its own server, so that makes sense. But on your normal domain systems, you would want this installed. Laps is basically a local administrative password. This ensures that every system has a different local admin password than one that is throughout your whole network, and that is very important. As a pen tester, if I get a hold of one system and you do not have Laps installed, that means I'll have access to every system that you set up with that same password. LSAS protection is not enabled. This is basically to prevent me from reading memory. Same thing with credential guard. 10, it's set to 10 for login account. Again, we get fire. There's our local directories. Some other things. Username system. Permissions. We see where we can append data and create directories. There's no AV. There's some users. Token privileges. Here's our token privileges. So we don't have elevated privileges or anything like that. We're not able to pull in logged in users. Ever logged in. We did see some default credentials that were found. Again, these are our credentials, so that really doesn't help us out. Here's some home directories. Check for possible brute force. So again, this is highlighting if we can brute force stuff. You notice that it didn't highlight it, so again, we can't brute force. We also knew that from earlier when we pulled that information. So now we're looking for services, seeing if there's any escalation via services path. Nothing standing out here. Okay, any DLL hijacking pass, things like that. So it looks like some edge stuff. Installed applications via programs, uninstall registry. Uh, you can only delete subdirectories and folders, so that really doesn't help us. All the ports listening. If there's anything in Vault. Checking any DP API, master keys, credential files. Okay, so it looks like it found that exe there. No putty might be a backup of credentials in those locations. So after all that, again, it basically kind of start wrapping this up a little bit better. If you end up searching more through the directories and stuff like that, you start looking at the C directory and you start noticing an oddball directory called scripts here. If we cd into scripts, oh, forgot I'm doing PowerShell. We see that there's two scripts in here. We see check servers ps1 and a log.txt. So if we cat the log.txt, Basically just tells us the time that it ran. If we cat the check servers, this is pretty intense. Let's see what this is doing. So this is a PowerShell script. It's looking, specify an email notification. It looks like it's trying to email Brittany CR. Notification to, it's going from admin, so that's interesting. Start looping here. Read the file with host cycle. This way it can add and remove host. And so we're looking at get content, Brittany CR host, where object, yada yada, is not equal to a pound sign. So it's reading this host file. If the line does not have a pound sign, then for that object, it's doing test connection, computer name, count, the dollar sign, which is basically replacing whatever that is in there in that line, doing account one dash EA silent continue, and then invoke expression. So this is almost like a command injection if you look at this, right? So it's reading the contents, right? And if it doesn't match pound, it's just going to the next thing. And for each one of these things, it's replacing whatever is on that line right here, computer name pound sign. So like SQL injection or anything else, you could inject whatever you want in this thing because there's no filter, there's nothing getting checked. So we need to change this host file and see how we can do that. All right, and that's going to execute as Brittany, which we're guessing that they're going to have elevated privileges. But let's look at stuff here. Let's see. So net groups, right? So this is the groups account. We're part of IT. So IT, usually has the ability to kind of do more privileges than others. So we don't know Brittany's account. So what we could try to do is just change it. We're IT, right? So Brittany CR. Let's just change our password. Now, so in a normal environment, this would lock out the user and probably would definitely get flagged, definitely get you in trouble on a pen test. So what we're executing the net user command, we're specifying the username, the new password, and we're telling it to execute on the domain. And it said it was successful. So we now changed Brittany's password, basically. And let's see if that gives us anything else. So we can now close this. Let's clear that. Let's go back into CTFs, that, and then raw. Okay, we'll go ahead and clear again. So now we're Brittany, so we're gonna do an SMB map. -h win corp .thm. User is gonna be Brittany. CR. Our password is going to be Brittany CR, and then -p, and then we'll put that. So based on what we've seen before, we should see the same directories, but now we'll be able to access that person's directory specifically. But we're just going to validate. Yep, so all read-onlys. Let's unmount our users directory. Okay, and now we're going to mount it as Brittany and that should give us access to that directory then. So mount -o options equals username equals Brittany CR. We're going to do //wincorp.thm. Again, we're going for users, and we'll put that in our users directory. So for Brittany's password, okay. And so now if we cd into users, we want to go in Brittany's directory. It's going to list all of them since I just did that. Okay, let's look at Brittany. Okay, there's that host file. So let's see if we can edit this. All right, looks like we can edit it. So again, we're injecting into the middle of the command. So what we want to do is put a semicolon that's going to stop that forward half of the command that we saw earlier. So again, if we kind of look at this here, bring this up so you can see this. So what we're doing is we're stopping right here. So it's going to do test connection dash computer name, whatever this is, which is going to be blank basically. Stop that and then do this command. And what we're going to do is we're just going to add a user. This is probably the easiest way to kind of get a user on there. So we're going to have them add me on there. We're going to have them add similar to what we set Brittany's password to be. And then that's going to add us to there. And we want to see if, again, if they have the ability to add us, they could also add us to the local group for administrators, which is the administrators on the system, not for the domain. But that still gives us, what we need access to. Okay. So if that's right, we save that. Okay. And we should be able to cat out that log. .843 was the last time it ran. Let's see if we can run date. All right, so it's 8:43:45 right now. So we're just waiting for that to run again. Once it runs again, then we could try logging in as our new account. So I'm just keep catting that log file until it changes. All right, so there we go. So now the cat changed. Again, that's before what we did. So now if we did so if everything worked right, then we should get a connection and we should be able to log in. All right, so apparently we did not get our host file correct. We can log back in as Boost. We could run a net user and see if my account got added. That would kind of tell us. Okay, so yeah, it was added. There's the account, part of the administrators group. Make sure that we didn't mess up anything. Oh, we forgot the explanation point for the password. All right, so now we're logged in as the account that we added. We're administrator on the system, so we should be able to now go to the administrative desktop and get the flag. There we go. All right. So again, a really cool box. Definitely works you through a lot of different services and paces to kind of get to where you need to be at for the final flag. A really interesting privilege escalation. Again, something that's not going to be picked up in your normal um, like recon and tools, like WinPs and stuff like that. It's more just kind of being on the box and working through it, and then eventually finding that script. You could also done a PS list and see things kind of pop up every once in a while. Like a PowerShell, and then you you kind of would need to see what that entailed. Yeah, I think you just do PS in PowerShell. Yeah, see, so that's here's your PS list. But again, that's not going to give you all the details. You'd really have to get in the nitty gritty and pull each one of these and pull each one of the things that are happening. Again, you can see PowerShell's executing, but you can't see what's executing on PowerShell. So this would be harder to kind of figure that out this way in a command line type fashion. So cool. Thanks for watching the video. I hope it helps you out with the box, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks. Bye.